All right, here we go. All right, let's see. We got Jank in the house. What's going on? Good to have you here, Clarence. And I got to follow up with you. It's been a busy week regarding the book. I just ordered them, so they're not going to be in until March 10th, and then I'll just get a signed copy off to you, and I'll send it to you. But I haven't forgotten, so I'll be in touch with you about that. All right, so let's see. Let me just stretch this out a little bit. And here we go. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. Let's try that. There we go. All right, so that should be good. All right, hope everybody's doing well here. Let's see, we got everything live. Everything appears to be working. Let me know if the microphone's okay. Are you able to see the screen? Okay, everything on the screen, hopefully. And yeah, away we go. All right, so this is lesson 8. Hard to believe we got here. Lesson 8 of Biblical Hebrew Without Fear. And what we are trying to do here is principally introduce biblical Hebrew by first going through the elements of modern Hebrew. We want to learn to speak a little bit of modern Hebrew, because when you're learning a language and that language is a living language, it's a lot easier to process, a lot easier to retain, because you can be more participatory in the learning process. And so this method has worked for so many people that I know. And yeah, and that's what we're trying to do here. So every lesson, we're going to have connections to the Bible. Today we'll be getting back into reading Exodus 3. And so we started that. We didn't do it in lesson 7, but lesson 6 and lesson 5, toward the end of the lesson, we read some Exodus 3, and we're starting to see that the modern Hebrew that we're learning actually shows up in the Bible, that the two languages really aren't all that different. So anywho, let's get started. So today, I forgot to update this. Today we're going to be doing, what did we say? To live, and we said to be, right? So I forgot to update that. Okay, so that's what we're doing. And we're going to start with a vocab review here. All right. And so the word for man in modern Hebrew, man, is ish. Ish. And I had said that the sheen here is, or the S symbol with the, that diacritical mark on top. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Sorry. Represents the SH sound. It's used for the Hebrew letter sheen. Okay. And so the word is ish. Ish. Whoop, goal is ending in less than 5 minutes. Thanks, Jank. Yeah, let me fix that. I think no matter what I set it at, it's ambitious though, right? Who knows? Let's see. There we go. Boom. Okay. Oh, only one can be. All right, I'll fix that in a minute. Thank you so much for pointing that out, though. All right, so ish. All right, so that means man, and then the feminine form is isha, isha, and sometimes I put that H in, sometimes I don't. This is not a consonant here. This is the letter hey functioning as a vowel marker. But it's good that you see it both ways, because all textbooks and journals and whatever, they're going to transliterate it differently, sometimes with an H present, sometimes without it. But that AH at the end, it's really just the consonant, the vowel ah. Okay. And the hey is represented to indicate that there's a vowel there in the Hebrew. So ish, masculine singular form, isha, feminine singular form. One means man, the other means woman. I think we probably talked about the dagesh, or the dot inside the shin here, and that is there because of the historical letter nun would have been there, an N sound. Okay, and if you've learned the word for people, it's anashim, anashim, and that actually has the N in it. Okay, but it's assimilated in the word isha. Okay, the nun has assimilated into the shin, and so in ancient times that would have been doubled. Okay, that's what that dot indicates. It's essentially a doubling dot. Okay, but modern Hebrew does not pronounce it. And when we read biblical Hebrew here, as with most scholars, we read it according to modern Israeli pronunciation. So we're not going to pronounce the historic doubling. The doubling is important, though. The doubling is important for, for understanding a number of factors in the Hebrew language, but we're not going to get into that right now. Okay. So next, the word yeled, which means boy or child. Yeled. Yeled. Accent on the first syllable or stress on the first syllable. Next, yelda. This is the feminine. Okay. Yelda. I should mention that the Arabic cognate is weled. Weled. W-A-L-A-D. Weled. In fact, you know what? Whoops. Hold on. Stop making capitals. Oops. Man, I am all thumbs here today. Walad. Nope. Let's try again. There we go. All right. So Arabic. The Arabic is walad. Let me see if I can bring that down to another line. That's a little neater. Now, why am I telling you this? This is not our Hebrew Arabic course, which we will be getting back to before long. Okay. But I tell you this because a lot of the yuds in word roots in Hebrew historically were W's, the letter wow. Okay, historically. Now, as the course gets more advanced, we'll talk about how we know that. Okay, but for now, just take my word for it that the word yeled, historically, there would have been a W there, a wow. Okay. And over time, it evolved into a yud, a Y. Okay. That's part of the reason why, if you're going to understand Hebrew historically and how it sounded in ancient times, you have to know a little bit of Arabic. It really is necessary. But that's, for a more advanced level. Okay. All right. So we have yeled, okay, which corresponds to the Arabic weled. And we have yalda, which is girl. In modern Arabic, we use the word, in the Levant anyway, we use the word binit, okay, for girl, and it corresponds to the Hebrew word daughter, but that's for another time. Okay, let's scroll up here. So one of the words for student that we've learned is talmid. Talmid, okay, masculine singular, talmid. This comes from the root lamed mem dalet. Lamed mem dalet, okay, which we learned last time means to learn. Okay, the feminine singular form is talmidah. Talmid, a male student, talmidah, a female student. Then we had the word for grandfather, which does not end in a hey, it ends in an aleph, so that's a sign that this is an Aramaic word, and it is saba. Saba, with the stress on the first syllable. Saba. Saba. And grandmother is savta. Basically the same word, but with a tav thrown in. Okay, and that tav in Hebrew is oftentimes a feminine marker, as it is in Arabic, in Aramaic. It's very much a Semitic thing. Okay. All right, now before we go over to our other vocab words for review, are there any questions? I see we've got 6 people tuning in, which is great, but I want to make sure that I'm at least giving you guys the opportunity to, to ask questions. So feel free to do that. I'll keep my eye on the chat. Okay. All right. Good. We're looking good here. not what we're doing. Mere activity. Sorry, just trying to. There we go. That's what I was looking for, the analytics. Okay. All right. No preguntas, no problemas. Yalla. All right. Very good. Which, and by the way, the word yalla used in the chat there is an Arabic word meaning let's go, but it's actually part of the Hebrew lexicon too. It's a modern Hebrew word as well. Modern Hebrew has appropriated that Aramaic word. Okay, so you'll hear Hebrew speakers use the word yalla too, even though it's technically an Arabic word. Okay, so we also learned some vocabulary words, particularly with regard to languages. And so the first one was for Hebrew, and we said that to say Hebrew, it is ivrit, ivrit, ivrit. Okay. English, anglit, anglit. And by the way, these words are all feminine. The it suffix, okay, the it suffix on these yud tav is a feminine singular ending in modern Hebrew. Okay, so we've got ivrit, anglit. Now Arabic is aravit. Notice that some of these words begin with ayin, like ivrit and aravit. And some of these that begin with the A sound or begin with a vowel begin with aleph, like anglit or aramit. Aramit. Okay. And in modern Hebrew, the aleph and the ayin are silent letters. They're silent consonants. They have quiesced, we would say. All right, and then one more language for now would be Sfaradit. Sfaradit, which would be Spanish. So Hebrew, English, Arabic, Aramaic, and Spanish. And I chose those because those are the ones that I deal with the most. Okay, so now we learned a little bit about the present tense in the last video, in the last lesson. And so the infinitive lichtov means to write, but the base form of the present tense in modern Hebrew, and the base form is always going to be the masculine singular. Okay, that's going to be the simplest form, is kotev, kotev, kotev. And notice the vowel pattern here, an O-E vowel pattern, kotev. So lichtov, to write, kotev, writing. Okay. To speak is ledaber, ledaber, ledaber. And this one's easier to convert into the present tense because all you do is chop off the lamed, replace it with a mem, and you've got medaber, medaber. Okay. Infinitive, ledaber, and masculine singular present tense, medaber. Okay, now to live. Now this does not mean to be alive, not live in that sense. This means to live in a location, we would say. If you're asking someone where they live, this is the form you'd use. So the infinitive is lagur, lagur, lagur. And the present tense is gar, gar. And you might say, hey, wait a second. I thought Hebrew verbs were supposed to have 3 letters in their root. And not all of them do. This is technically a biconsonantal root. Verbs like this, we call them hollow verbs. I'll explain that some other time. But, well, no, I can explain it now. So the idea is that there is no middle consonant in the root. And so there's a first and a last, but not a middle. And so we call them hollow verbs for that reason. Okay? Lagur and ga. And then to be, this is an interesting one. The infinitive is lihyot, lihyot. And then you'll notice the present tense is blank, right? But you know that already intuitively because so many of the sentences that we've done have had the verb is or am, the verb to be in the present tense, in other words, and there's never been a verb because we said we don't need it. And so we'll re-encounter this in our sample sentences. Okay. All right, I saw that Money Heist put a comment up, but then retracted it, so I didn't get to answer your question. Feel free to write again if you'd like. Okay. All right, so our infinitives really quickly. Lichtov, to write. Ledaber, to speak. Lagur, to live in a location. And lihyot, to be. Present tense, writing. Kotev, kotev. Midaber, means speaking. Midaber. Shabbat shalom. All right. And then ga is going to be the masculine singular present tense. And then for lihyot, we don't have a present tense. Technically, there is a Hebrew form, but it is not used in everyday speech. The word would be hove, but we don't use it in everyday speech. So we'll just kind of let that be. Okay, is it possible to revive biblical Hebrew? Money Heist says. And modern Hebrew is a revival of biblical Hebrew, actually. So modern Hebrew, if you study the work of Avraham ben Yehuda, yep, glad to have you with us there. Thanks for the comment below. I'm trying to keep an eye on all these comments while talking. Really glad that you guys are here. So, biblical Hebrew is a revival of modern Hebrew. Okay, but biblical Hebrew did not have many words that we have today. One example being telephone, right? And so, Ben Yehuda was very creative in coming up with new words, new Hebrew words for the neologisms, we would say, new words for modern Hebrew so the language could function in the modern world. And sometimes that was done by taking biblical Hebrew words and giving them new meanings. So, for instance, in the book of Ezekiel, this is an example I give. The word chashmal, which means like gleaming amber, okay, chashmal, became the word for electricity. Electricity. Now, there is no word in the Hebrew Bible for electricity for obvious reasons. So, I believe it was Ben Yehuda who reappropriated the word chashmal and used it for electricity. So that's one example. Certain Aramaic words were brought into modern Hebrew, and you see Saba and Savta are examples of that. Okay, Saba and Savta. Not that. So Nana, yeah, with Chashmal, yeah, it occurs in the book of Ezekiel. In fact, if you guys want, I'll bring it up for you really quickly just to show you. There we go. Sorry about that. When I switched over, I forgot that the microphone was not turned on. All right, good. There we go. Well, so were you satisfied with that? No, I didn't. I didn't explain it yet. So, all right, there we go. So here we are in Ezekiel, and I'll bring this up in Hebrew and in English. Let's see. Hopefully that's okay. So here we go. So you get in Ezekiel 1:4, it says, Va'ere, which means, and I looked, Vihene ruach se'ara, which means, and, behold, a stormy wind, ba'a min hatzafon, coming out of the north. And then we get anan gadol, a great cloud, ve'esh mitlakachat, which is, this is actually the word, and Nana, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't this the verb that is used for volcanic eruptions? I think it's the verb that is used in modern Hebrew for volcanic eruptions. So, ve'esh mitlakachat, okay, which, notice what it says in the translation there, a fire flashing forth, okay, a fire flashing forth, which is kind of interesting, right? What does that actually mean? I don't know. Okay, a fire flashing forth. So something was going on with fire here. Okay, whoops, sorry, I just realized you guys couldn't see part of that. All right, and so we get ve'esh mitlakachat. So I believe that this is a word that has been reappropriated for modern Hebrew, actually. Okay, and then we get vinoga lo. Okay, so and vinoga lo saviv, and brightness was all around it. Okay, and then we get interesting, used in connection to gas. Yeah, I'm fairly certain. I don't have a Hebrew dictionary right in front of me right now, but I think it's used for volcanic eruptions too. Yeah. Okay, and then so yeah, umetocho, and from its midst, ke'en hachashmal. Okay, mitoch ha'esh. And notice how this is translated there. And in the midst of the fire, as it were, gleaming metal. Okay, so ke'en hachashmal, in modern Hebrew, that looks like something like the eye of the electricity. Like the eye of the electricity, which is, would be very strange. But this word chashmal here, it essentially means gleaming amber. Some translations say, gleaming metal. Okay, and the idea is we're not entirely sure what it means in ancient times, but that seems to be the case. But if you look, I'll bring up the the biblical Hebrew dictionary for you, just so you can do that. Why is this not look up? There we go. Boom. Okay. And so when you look at the word chashmal here, we see that it occurs in, Ezekiel 8:2. There's another. We get it in Jewish Aramaic, okay, like the gleaming of whatever chashmal is, metal. We notice that in the Akkadian language from Mesopotamia, there's a word chashmanu, which means a bluish stone, and that is probably a cognate, okay? And then you get this word ishmaru, okay, which is translated or rendered into Greek as electron. They have the stress on the first syllable, interestingly, electron, okay, which means white gold. Okay, then you get in Akkadian elmeshu and elmeshtu, which means a precious stone shining like yellow. Also brass, right? Then you get in Elamite, it's some kind of inlay work. So the bottom line is we're not entirely sure what Ezekiel meant, but the best thing to do is to look at the Akkadian evidence, because where is Ezekiel, serving as a prophet? It is in Mesopotamia, where, guess what language is spoken? In addition to Aramaic, there is Akkadian. And so it makes all the sense in the world that we would look to Akkadian for an explanation of that. Okay? All right. Any questions on that? Sorry, I didn't mean to get off track, but yeah, someone had asked the question above, can biblical Hebrew be revived? That's what modern Hebrew is, essentially. Yep. So it takes, modern, or it takes biblical Hebrew words. Sometimes it has to give them new meanings. It uses Middle Hebrew words, rabbinical Hebrew words. There's Aramaic words that are used. And then, of course, Arabic influences a little bit. And then, you get some English, of course. And yeah, so there you go. Hopefully that's helpful. Okay. So here we go. All right. So chashmal, yes. Where are we going? We're going back to this. Okay. So there are infinitives, and let's do a Hebrew drill here. So this is just for our review words. Okay. How would we say the boy writes? And again, we're going to limit ourselves to the vocabulary that we're using in our lists for now, because everybody has a different proficiency level in biblical and modern Hebrew. So just to keep everybody on the same page, we're going to use the words that we're putting in the vocab lists, and we'll expand our vocabulary with each lesson. Okay, but the boy writes. So how do we say the? Well, we're going to put ha at the beginning, ha, and the word for boy we said was yeled, yeled. Okay, so hayeled. Okay, and that can mean a child, like a young boy. Hayeled. Okay, and then since boy is a masculine singular word, we're going to need the masculine singular form of the verb, hayeled kotev. Hayeled kotev. Okay, and there we go. Excellent. I'm seeing the answer in the chat. There we go. Yeah, and just I'm looking at the chat real quick. So yeah, Jank. Yeah, wonder how the LXX uses it. All right, since you asked, I have to look. It's interesting that here you go. Let's go back really quickly, and let's pull it up in the LXX. The trusty dusty LXX. Not that. Not that. Not that. Nope. Nope. Oh, that's funny. Here we go. All right, so what do we say? Ezekiel 1:4. Okay, do I have the LXX up? Yeah, here's the LXX translation. Electrum. Yeah. Oh, that's right, because we looked at that. What am I saying? Yeah, we looked at the Greek before. It's rendered with electrum. Okay, and I'll bring this up for you here just so you can. Oops, not what I meant to do. Sorry. LXX Ralph's tagged. There we go. And just so you can see it. Yeah, and there you go. Oh, I knew they had that wrong. Okay. So this word, electru, right? Boom, right there. I'll zoom in for you. Okay. Electru. There we go. Man, we're doing everything tonight. Modern Hebrew, biblical Hebrew, a little Greek, talking about Akkadian. There we go. All right, so back to the sentences though now. And we said Hayeled Kotev. Next, we've got the woman speaks Hebrew. So let's start with Hebrew. And we said that was going to be Ivrit. Ivrit. Okay. And then the woman we said is Ha-Isha. Ha-Isha. The woman. Okay. And then speaks, we said Midaber. Midaber is the masculine singular, but to make it feminine singular, it's midaber et. Midaberet. It has a tav at the end to make it feminine. So, haisha midaberet ivrit. Haisha midaberet ivrit. Okay? Haisha midaberet ivrit. Okay. My daughter lives here. Actually, I shouldn't have put this in because we don't know how to say that. It would be habat the daughter of me, okay? And that would be, I don't think we've learned that in a previous lesson. Or maybe we have in previous lessons, yeah. So habat sheli, the daughter of me. Habat sheli. Habat sheli gara. Remember we saw above here, the masculine singular is gar. Okay, the masculine singular is gar. And so the feminine singular, gara po. Habat sheli gara po. Habat sheli gara po. Okay. Yeah, there we good. We have, sometimes I get confused between what we've done in the Hebrew Arabic course and the, this strictly Hebrew course. All right. The students speak English. Now, we didn't do the plural, but we know that talmid is the masculine singular for student. And so we're going to add an im ending. Hatalmidim midabrim anglit. Hatalmidim midabrim anglit. Hatalmidim midabrim anglit. Okay? And then the grandmother writes a book. Savta kotevet sefer. Savta kotevet sefer. Okay? All right. The word savta, you might say, why didn't we put ha on the beginning? To be grammatically proper, we shouldn't, because that aleph at the end serves essentially the same function as the definite article in Hebrew, savta. So that's for our Aramaic course. We'll talk about that some other time. But in most, did I say Arabic? I meant to say Aramaic. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm dealing with 6 languages a day right now, and so I apologize. So we're going to see in our modern Aramaic course that I just started earlier this week that the Aramaic nouns, it's so hard to be accurate here. I'm going to have to speak in generalizations. Generally speaking, the Aramaic noun with the mark of determination, which is kind of like the definite article, and I say kind of like because it's not exactly like, but Aramaic nouns in many dialects always have the mark of determination unless they're suffixed, okay? And so a word like Malka, for instance, in Aramaic, Malka can mean the king, but also just king, and it can also mean a king. So Malka, with that final aleph, if you will, in Aramaic, in many of the dialects, can mean both king, a king, and the king. And the only way you know how to translate it is, you guessed it, by context. Context, context, context. Context is Malka, king. All right, here we go. Some new high-frequency verbs, okay? So the 2 new ones here. All right, the first one is lilmod. Lilmod. Okay, lilmod, and that means to learn. Lilmod. This is, I'm going to put this in here, this is a G stem. The word stem, if you've studied modern Hebrew before, modern Hebrew, we call it binyan. Binyan, okay? Which is a word meaning conjugation. So binyan. So they'll, in modern Hebrew grammar, they'll call this binyan kal or binyan pa'al, okay? We're going to say G stem. This is the language that's used essentially internationally for Semitic languages, so that when we're talking about the grammar of one Semitic language, we can more readily compare it to the grammar of the others. And so what's called the kal stem or the pa'al stem, like here in classical Hebrew grammar, is called form 1 in Arabic grammar, but they're the same thing. And in Aramaic, it's called pa'al in certain grammars. So because these languages are essentially the same, we really need nomenclature that allows us to compare them more readily. And that's why we're going to use the term G stem. It comes from the German, which I'm going to mispronounce, Grundstem, which is like the base stem, okay? And that's lilmod. So lilmod will follow a certain conjugation, the G stem conjugation. And when the root lamed, mem, dalet, whoops, there's the dalet, is put in the G stem, it means to learn. But look at this verb here. We have the same root, lamed, mem, dalet. Lamed, mem, dalet. And when you put it in what we call here the D stem, it means to teach. To teach. So what is teaching? Teaching is making someone learn, at least in principle, right? And so if we take the verb to learn, lilmod, and we put it into the D stem, what it's doing is it's saying you're making someone do something, okay? Now, this is a bit of an oversimplification, but it's hopefully helping you to at least gain some insight into how the Hebrew verbal system works. All right, now, G stem we said was from German. The G is, again, Grund, I think you'd pronounce it. Nana, correct me if I'm wrong. But that's the foundation stem. The D stem, we call it D because the middle consonant of the root is doubled with a dagesh, okay? Now, in classical Hebrew grammar, the D stem is called the piel. Piel, okay? Okay, but the D means doubled. So verbs in the D stem are almost always going to have a dagesh, which functions as a doubling dot. Okay. So in ancient times, this would have been pronounced lilamed. Do you hear how I'm hanging out on that M? Lilamed. Now, in modern Hebrew, you're not going to pronounce it like that. Lilamed. It's as if there's only one mem there. Okay? But in biblical times, that would have been doubled just as it is in Aramaic and in Arabic today. Modern Aramaic and modern Arabic preserve the doubling. Okay? So that's why we call it the D stem. So lilmod is the G stem verb meaning to learn. Lilamed is the D stem verb meaning to teach. Okay. All right. It's getting a little heavier, isn't it? We're not doing a lot today. Not a lot of new stuff. So if this seems overwhelming, just take a deep breath. It's all going to be okay. All right. So here we go. Let's form the verbs. Okay. So we're going to start with lilmod, which means to learn. And I'm going to let you have a look at this for just a minute. Okay. Just take a minute. I need to get myself a drink of water and then I'll be right back. Give me 45 seconds and I'll be right back. But I want you to try to pronounce this chart out loud. And before I go, what do you mean it is not the same? Sorry, I'm not sure what comment you're referring to, Nana. Are you I was talking about the pronunciation of lilamed. Okay, so in biblical times, they, Hebrew speakers would have hung out on that mem. So lilamed. I'm exaggerating it a bit. Lilamed. Okay, and but in modern Hebrew, it is simplified. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah, so in modern Hebrew, you don't hear Israeli saying, lilamed or midaber, right? It's midaber. So the correct spelling preserves the dagesh, but the pronunciation that's used today does not retain the doubling at all. So we preserve the doubling when we write with nikud, with vocalization and diacritic marks, but we do not preserve the doubling in modern speech. All right, give me just a minute or so. Just got to get a glass of water and I will be right back. So just read through that chart there. All right. All right. Thanks for your patience, everybody. What did I do with my glasses? I just want to look at the chat. Yes, but Arabic is closer to an ancient. Yeah, Arabic preserves. It's very interesting. Even though Arabic is a much later language than Hebrew, Hebrew was around long before Arabic. Arabic, interestingly enough, preserves a lot of the most ancient features of the Semitic language family. Even though Arabic is a later language, it preserves so many of the features that Hebrew lost from the Semitic language family. So, is what it is, you know? Languages are funny. Okay. So let's see. All right. The woman drinks Mayim. I can't read the nikud there. I think that says shota. Okay. But yeah, the nikud, when it shows up in the chat, I can't even read it. It's just too small. So Haisha shota mayim. Okay. So here we go. To learn. Binyan pa'al, binyan kal, and or what we're going to use the G stem. So present tense, learning, lomed. That's the masculine singular. Lomed. Okay. The feminine singular, lomedet, lomedet, lomedet. And try to say these out loud or, mouth them if you're able. Lomdim, lomdim. And notice, biblical Hebrew students, that the schwa here, historically, that schwa should be pronounced. Historically, according to the rules of biblical Hebrew grammar, it should be pronounced. But in modern Hebrew, it is not pronounced. It is not pronounced. Okay. All right, lomdim and lomdot. Lomdot for the feminine plural. So im for masculine plural, ot for feminine plural. Lomed, lomedet, lomdim, lomdot. Okay, now when we take this verbal root into the D stem, we get, it means to teach. Lelamed is the infinitive. Lelamed. Now notice what happens. Milamed. Oh, wait, that's just like the verb midaber that we learned, to speak. Because midaber, it adds a mem, it adds a schwa, it has the same vowel pattern, the A-class vowel here, short A type. We call this vowel sign patach. And the I-class long E type, tsere. Okay? Milamed. This is a pattern for the D stem. You can rip out the lamed, the mem, and the dalet and replace it with any other verbal root, those three letters, and it would be in the D stem. Okay? It's almost like a plug and play. Milamed, masculine singular. Feminine singular, milamedet. Milamedet. Masculine plural, milamdim. Milamdim. And feminine plural, milamdot. Milamdot. Yep. Yeah, in modern Hebrew, basically don't vocalize the schwa unless you have to. Yeah, in modern Hebrew really just doesn't use vowels signs. They don't use the nikud for the most part at all. You open a page of the newspaper, an Israeli newspaper, and you might get one vowel sign on there or something if there's some ambiguity where the word in that context could be read differently, but it's really not something that's used. And Nana can tell me, I forget if it's after the 5th grade. I think it's after 5th grade in the Israeli curriculum where they just get away from reading with nikud. Okay, so here we go. The root lamed mem dalet appears throughout the Tanakh. One example, so that you may learn to fear. Deuteronomy 14:23. Lema'an, so that. Tilmad, you may learn. Lira, to fear. This is not exactly how you would say this in, necessarily in modern Hebrew, but it's how it shows up in the Tanakh. And we'll deal with that some other time. Okay, now let's look at some related words here, since we're getting on to learning and teaching. Okay, and so first one is limud. okay, which can mean study. There's multiple definitions for all these words. Okay, the word more, which means teacher for a male teacher, more. And if you want to make it a female teacher, mora. And you say, hey, wait, that's just like the word Torah. Yeah, it absolutely is. Because the tav in the word Torah is a nominal ending. It's or prefix. It's a noun prefix. You can add a t, a tav, to a verbal root, and it will make it a noun. Torah. The mem is also a prefix that makes it into essentially a participle. Okay, we'll talk about that. But the word more and mora are technically biblical Hebrew participles. Okay. And Torah, I noted here, Torah doesn't really mean law in the Hebrew Bible. It means instruction. And even today, it's used very broadly, not just for the first 5 books of the Bible, but for Jewish learning in general, Jewish religious learning and so on. But it's also used in modern Hebrew to mean a theory. Okay. All right. Then we get the adjective. I gave you after I wrote this, I gave you the masculine and feminine. The masculine is chacham, which means wise, chacham, and chama. Okay, which means wise in the feminine. The word wisdom is chokhmah. And then through this word in here, the word for important is chashuv. And I forgot to update sometimes people use a ch. Okay, we're going to use that. Chashuv, important. All right, so let's do a little bit of reading. And while we're reading this, I encourage you to try to put the answer in the chat without using Google Translate or anything. Just try to read it out loud and put the answer in the chat. Okay? All right. So, first one. Hatalmid lomed ivrit. Hatalmid lomed ivrit. So, ha is going to be the definite article. Talmid means student. And you say, hey, wait a second, I just noticed something. The word Talmid, how is it built? It's on the root Lamed Mem Dalet with a tav prefix thrown on. A tav prefix is added to the root meaning to learn, and that's how the word student is formed. Hatalmid. The student, lomed, is learning, or learns, either one. You can translate either way. Hatalmid lomed, okay, ivrit. Okay, that's right. Yeah, Jenks got the Spanish for us there. Yep. All right. So hatalmid lomed ivrit. Lomed, we said, is a G stem, masculine singular, G stem masculine singular verb of the verbal root lamed mem dalet. When I talk about parsing verbs, meaning breaking them down, this is what we're doing. We say that lomed is from the root lamed mem dalet. We have to identify the root, lamed mem dalet. We have to identify the binyan or the stem. We're going to say this is G stem. How do we know it's not D stem? There's no doubling dot, right? Okay. All right. And so then we get the vowel pattern, and the O-E vowel pattern, lomed, is characteristic of the G stem. Okay? Hatalmid lomed ivrit. And then that means Hebrew, of course. All right, next one. Hamore melamed ivrit. Hamore, the teacher, but we say, oh, wait a second. If we take the nikud away, the masculine and feminine look the same. So look up here. Notice that the masculine is more with an E vowel, whereas the feminine is mora with an A vowel. And so when we come down here, hamore, oh, that's an E vowel, must be masculine. Hamore milamed. Now that's a D stem verb. We see the doubling. We see the mem prefix. We see the schwa sign underneath the mem, and we see the AE vowel pattern. Okay, so it doesn't mean learns, it means teaches or is teaching. The teacher is teaching. Now, why didn't we use milamedet or milamdim or milamdot, those three other forms? And the answer is because the subject is masculine singular, the verb must agree. And therefore, we need the masculine singular form. Masculine singular requires a masculine singular verb there. So, hamore melamed ivrit. The teacher is teaching Hebrew. Okay, now we get hatalmidah. You see the root, lamed mem dalet. Lamed mem dalet, hatalmidah. The ha is a definite article. The tav is that noun prefix. Okay, not all nouns have a tav prefix, but the tav prefix can indicate that something's a noun. We've got the root letters and then a feminine singular suffix, hatalmidah. The student, female student, okay, the female student, not lomed, but lomedet. The subject is feminine singular, therefore, the verb must be feminine singular. Hatalmidah lomedet gam ivrit. Okay, and a lot of times we could say, the gam can move around, but sometimes we can end the sentence with gamken. Gamken. The student, I would usually move that there. Hatalmidah gam lomedet ivrit, or hatalmidah lomedet ivrit gamken. Gamken is another way we can say that. Okay. All right, let me pause for a second. And for those who are, just enjoying the broadcast, if you would, we're looking to get 5 super chats for this broadcast. Small amount of money, doesn't really require much. I think the lowest tier is like $2, but those $2 donations really add up, allows me to keep doing what I'm doing. We just started the Modern Aramaic series, and that, I was able to get, a pen for my iPad thanks to you guys, and so that I can actually write out the Aramaic script on the screen, and that's part of the broadcast. A more substantial way to help, if you're interested in doing so, is by becoming a member of the YouTube channel. And for $8 a month, you gain access to all of these live stream recordings after they're uploaded. You get early access to videos. And for those who contribute, once in a while I do live Zoom calls. In fact, I want to do a live Zoom call tomorrow. So for the members who are on this broadcast, please shoot me a message on YouTube, or if you have my cell number, if I've given that to you, text me, and we'll find a time, maybe tomorrow or Sunday night or something like that, where we can have a short live Zoom call and just do some Q&A or something like that. But yeah, that's a benefit that members get. And then, you could also become a member of the Patreon page, where you gain early access to all of my videos. You get access to the unabridged videos, which they number in the hundreds now: Arabic, Hebrew, Aramaic of different dialects, biblical exegesis videos. I have, teachings on on like the Hebrew, Greek, and Aramaic texts of Ecclesiastes and Jonah and Exodus and Isaiah, parts of Genesis, things like that. And so that Patreon channel is really like the granddaddy of my resources. And for $12 a month, you gain access to absolutely everything. So thanks so much for considering supporting the channel. I'll wait, a few minutes here. Yeah, we got who is learning, right? Oh, there we go. Hamore sheli medaber ivrit. Very good. Yeah, and notice, I want to draw your attention to something. So Cenk just put in the comment this right there, if you can see that. In fact, I'm going to copy this, Cenk, just so people can see it more readily. And I'm just going to paste it here. Whoops, let's increase the size of that. All right, so notice what he wrote. He wrote it without the nikud, and I was immediately able to read it as Hamore sheli melamed ivrit. Why didn't I say Hamorah? Technically, it could be. right? There's nothing, if this word appeared in isolation, it could be more or mora, male teacher or female teacher. The reason we know is because of the verb. He used a masculine singular verb, which means the subject has to agree and be masculine singular, okay? So reading without vowels is not as hard as it actually seems. It takes a little time for sure, but it is actually doable. All right, let me just go back there. Oh, well, whoops. And how do I do this? There we go. All right. So there we go. So let's do a little more reading really quickly. Just do a few more sentences. Okay. So we've got Haish Chacham. Okay. The man. And then we've got Chacham. This is the masculine singular form. Appropriate because man is masculine and singular. The man is wise. And you say, hey, where's the verb for, for is, right? Why don't we have a present tense form of the verb to be? And it's because, like we said above, there is practically speaking, in everyday speech, there's no is verb in Hebrew, okay? All right, next we got hu lomed Torah, okay? He is learning, not hu lomedet, not hu lomdim, because since hu is masculine and singular, it means he, we need the masculine singular G stem here, lomed, hu lomed. He is learning Torah. He is studying Torah. Okay. All right. Ha'isha chama, the woman is wise. Contrast that with ha'ish chacham. We have the feminine singular adjective to go with the feminine singular noun. Ha'ish chachama. And then finally, last one, he milamedet yiladim. She teaches children. He is feminine singular, means she, right? Remember, who is he and he is she in Hebrew? He. Therefore, since this is feminine singular, we need the feminine singular verb to teach. He milamedet yiladim. This is the masculine plural form of yeled. Okay, which is just, it's kind of the functions as the gender neutral term too. So when you just want to say children, as long as there's one male child present, you use yiladim. He milamedet yiladim. All right, cool. Well, we're going to have to hit the pause button for now. Time for me to go catch some dinner, but we'll continue this lesson at some point this weekend, hopefully. I have my final basketball game the final game that I'm coaching of this season on Saturday. And, of course, church responsibilities Sunday morning. If you guys are ever in Connecticut, come out to Northville Baptist Church, where I'm the pastor. For a Sunday service, but it's really great having this community online. I'm so glad that you all are here. I appreciate your supporting. If you would, make sure you hit that like button just to help with the algorithm. It helps spread the word about this. What time am I thinking of meeting tomorrow? Truthfully, I have no idea. I've got a bunch of things on the docket for tomorrow, and later tonight I've got to sit down and work through my schedule. You work in the AM. Yeah, so if I do this, it's, I don't even want to say. Truthfully, I don't want to say. I'm not really sure what time I'm going to have available. Saturday is kind of a funny day, but yeah, we'll try to figure something out, and I'll try to keep that in mind. All right, cool. So yeah, hit that like button. Be sure to become a member of the Patreon channel. Head on over to Biblical Languages and Literature at Patreon, and I appreciate your becoming a member. Thank you so much. Great to see you all. Catch you on the flippity flip. Bye-bye.